Hey guys, welcome back to yet another episode of the Music Den. I'm your host Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a fantastic day, and above all else, which is most important, that you're looking after yourselves and one another. Today, ladies and gentlemen, before I get into the topic of another what we hope to be a fantastic episode, I want to welcome back to the channel Mr. Ken Cheshire. How's it going, Ken?
Going well, Armando. It's good to be here and ask that crucial question once again.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have reconvened to ponder and dissect the question that has been on the minds of music critics and fans alike since the beginning of time, or at least since I pressed record for this episode. And that question is this a masterpiece? The band is Heart. The album in question is Dreamboat Annie, their debut release. Now, I'll give you just a bit of background on this album. Dreamboat Annie was released in September of 1975. The exact date we are not quite sure. It was recorded from July to August of 1975, and quite a short time. And I will reiterate that most of the albums I've been talking about lately on these episodes have been recorded in quite a short span of time, months as opposed to years. Okay. The album has a playing time of 40 minutes and 2 seconds, so quite short. Produced by one Mike Flicker and released through Mushroom Records. Mushroom Records was a small Canadian label that the band signed to, the band hailing from Seattle, Washington. They found themselves in Vancouver, British Columbia, and signed a deal with a burgeoning Mushroom Records at the time. The album had four singles released from it. Those singles were How Deep It Goes, Magic Man, Crazy on You, and the title track Dreamboat Annie. Now, 10 tracks in total. I will give my opinion at the end, and I shall pass the virtual mic over to Mr. Cheshire, and he shall give his opinion of this album. And I will attempt to sit idly by quietly and let Mr. Cheshire give his opinion. I will attempt it. I'm not saying I can do it, but I will attempt it. Ken, take
Well,
it away.
you're a better man than I then. Um, yeah, 1975. I was a junior in high school.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
Um, yes, I know. We used to, yeah. Anyway, um, a band that was kind of kind of struck the world a little bit. I mean, from the leadership of sisters Ann and Nancy Wilson, both vocalist. Ann was the lead singer. Nancy Wilson also did vocals, but also a lot of the guitar work in the band, and did both very, very well. These are very accomplished musicians in their own right. So it was unusual at the time to have r- actual rock and roll that were particularly led not just as a front person in a band, but actually wrote the songs, played the music, and didn't rely on a band behind them. So Heart wouldn't exist without those two, and they continued through the decades. Um, so this was a bit of an anomaly at the time, as far as mainstream rock. You did have the Runaways and other, proto-punk
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But this was different, in an era where you also had artists such as, Pat Benatar and other female vocalists with just powerful voices. Ann Wilson, to this day, her voice still packs an incredible punch. So, the debut album, and a lot of lore behind this album that we'll get into a little bit later on. But uh, this peaked at number seven in the United States. I remember the two songs in particular, Crazy on You and Magic Man, on the radio all the time. Because remind you, younger people, that we didn't have streaming, and so all we had was radio unless you bought the albums or the
Or the singles.
45s.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, uh, and knowing the album, one of the questions is this a concept album? Not really, but there is a loose theme that runs throughout the album of the character Dreamboat Annie. Um, and so, and that gives it really a nice cohesiveness between the songs. The guitar work on this album is really great, um, and a lot. It's very melodic. There are a lot of subtle guitar flourishes um, in and out,
And if
and
Sorry, if I
yeah,
may just interject something really quickly. I did forget to mention who plays on the album, and we should have
yes,
mentioned that
please,
at the beginning of the episode. Now, playing on the album, you have Ann Wilson on lead vocals, flute, backing vocals, acoustic guitar, Nancy Wilson on electric and acoustic guitar, backing vocals. Excuse me, Roger Fisher on electric guitar, acoustic guitar, lap steel guitar. Howard Leese on electric guitar, synthesizer, orchestral arrangements. Steve Fossen on bass, fantastic bass player, and Mike DeRoger on drums. So
yes,
just I was remiss in mentioning that. My
no, yeah,
sincere
that's fine,
apologies. Please
yeah,
continue. Please continue.
yeah. The we have a little bit of Ann Wilson's flute playing, which is perfect.
Yes.
Wonderful tone. I mean, yeah, she does that just as well as she sings. The I really do like the tasteful way that the keyboards and synthesizers are used on this album.
Yeah.
It's always to supplement and never dominate. Of course, this is the mid 70s. The music wouldn't, in general, pop music wouldn't get really heavy into the synths until later on in the decade, and especially in the 80s. So, but this is primarily a guitar-driven album, which I like. I didn't buy this album at the time. My entry level as far as purchasing was was later with Dog and Butterfly. So the album as a whole, I came to really get to know better was later, and which might not have been a bad thing. I was, a little bit older, um, and yeah, this is a good example of an album of its time. This the mid '70s that represents the good music of that time. We talk a lot on this channel about albums that are of its time, but in a negative sense. In other words, that it sounds dated
Hmm.
and just it doesn't quite gel now. But this one still does. Um, this is an album I would recommend to someone that wasn't familiar with '70s music, and it said, Uncle Ken, what does '70s rock, good '70s rock sound like? I'd say listen to this album. This will give you a good idea. Strong vocals, strong guitar. All of the musicians just really bring, their A game throughout this album. Is it a masterpiece? I think for me, and I'm not an expert, but for me, especially as a debut album, I would say yeah, considering um, where this band would go after this and even to higher heights. Um, Even before they hit the 80s, where their sound changed and became more, pop and a little bit glam or whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
But this was them it's just a rock and roll band. And like I said, that were my teen years. That's what I grew up with.
Yeah.
Um, if it were not their debut album, um, I don't know where I would fall on that question, but this is such a strong debut album, and just really sets the tone for who Hart was going to continue to go. I mean, to open up the album with Magic Man really sets the tone for what's going on without hitting you over the head, with the electric guitar. I mean, it's certainly not immediately blistering like crazy on you is, but it's still there. It still rocks pretty hard. It's got that keyboard riff and layered guitars. And another thing that cannot be overlooked on this album is the incredible, not just lead vocals, but the harmony vocals, 3 and 4 part harmony vocals uh, of Anne and Nancy. Of course, you could only do in the studio, but still. And a lot of these songs are very personal
Hmm.
as far as the theme. I mean, Magic Man is definitely semi-autobiographical, um, and which I think it. I would imagine, I'll put it that way. I imagine that young women my age at the time would probably relate to. It sure made sense, and Magic Man has become still
It's still a
an
rock
album
F.
staple.
It's an FM
Yeah,
rock stable, FM rock
yeah,
radio
yeah.
stable. It is.
It's got 3 different iterations of the song Dreamboat Annie. Um, all 3 are wonderful. They're not exactly the same, particularly the third time as it closes out the album, but
Mhm.
it definitely gives that feeling of a unified character that
A
that runs
cohesion.
through the album. Definitely a cohesion.
Cohesion. Sorry.
Um, and I think to me one of the standout album tracks is "Soul of the Sea." Which runs, yeah, 6.5 minutes long. And it's just incredibly multi-layered and multi-sectioned. Um, and in a way, just is kind of, it has a lot of, I wouldn't call it a prog song, but it has a lot of prog elements to it that I really love. And it's got a wonderful taste for me, of a little bit of psychedelia, a little bit that psychedelic flavor in a lot of it. Um, and it's got the sound of the sea and stuff, which they were doing a lot of in albums, with nature sounds involved. But it's very atmospheric. The arrangements of the songs are very expansive. The guitars virtually shimmer on this song.
Hmm.
Not saying, and this is not taking away from the other songs, but this one just kind of stands out as a much larger canvas that they painted for this song. Um, Second one that stands out is the opening track of side 2, which is White Lightning and Wine.
Hmm.
They get a bit funky on this, they
Hmm.
really do, yeah. And
Whoo.
any chance on social media I get to recommend the deeper tracks off this album, I definitely do. Um, Simply because the strength of Magic Man and Crazy on You, I think may have a tendency to overshadow these album tracks.
Hmm.
And I could go song to song and break them down, um,
You
but
can.
I'm going to let Armando get his say in, and who knows what we'll cover from here. So, yeah, this is a
Well,
great album. This is a great album.
well, no, you're doing wonderfully.
Says the curmudgeon. Yep.
Says the curmudgeon.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between being a curmudgeon and having good taste in music. There's a big difference.
Well, that.
Um,
Said another curmudgeon. Yeah.
yes, and well, we're not that far apart, really, if you think
Not
about
that. Yeah. Yeah.
it.
Little
God help
brother.
me. Um, we could be actually. Um, my view on this album, I am coming up with albums to talk about under this topic. This album came to mind, and I thought I really need to sit and re-listen to this album. I've known of it since it came out, basically, of the singles. And big surprise, ladies and gentlemen, I went on a record shopping spree in 2014, and I bought most of the Heart albums on vinyl. Vinyl, yes.
Goes.
Along with a wonderfully beautiful copy of Made in Japan from Deep Purple.
Mm.
Not a fingerprint on the vinyl. But we'll get back to Heart. Now, in re-listening to this album for this episode, I have gained a new appreciation for this album. The music on it is impeccable. In my notes, Abby, for in terms of the track listing, I will make one comment. I This is a loosely based concept album. There's a thread of a concept going running through it of the character of one Dreamboat Annie. Whether it's Ann Wilson or not, who knows? But my money is on the fact that it is. I really do believe that if they had put Dreamboat Annie Fantasy Child, their 1 minute interlude or intro at the beginning of the album and just switch places with Magic Man, you'd have a wonderful uh, thematic piece running through the entire album. With Magic Man as a single, it is still played on FM rock radio today. The fantastic, thick guitar tone that is used on the intro, the use of an oscillator on the synths is just brilliant. And
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out how in the hell they got that synth tone in terms of, the swirling synth tone. It's used with the use of an oscillator. I think it's fantastic. Crazy
Yeah.
on You again, AM/FM Gold. It's a hit. The fourth track, Soul of the Sea, 6 minutes and 33 seconds. Nice use of the ocean waves effect on the intro. Great lush strings on this piece, multi-section, beautiful harmonies. Again, nice thick guitar tone, nice dynamics on this because you go from beautiful symphonic elements to Ann Wilson doing a almost ear-piercing vocal on her vocal delivery. So there's a lot of what I call use of light and shade on this track. Wonderfully done.
Yep.
The fact that side one is ended off with Dreamboat Annie, the title track at 2 minutes and 2 seconds. Great use of banjo on this track. Jim, I know you're
Yes.
watching. Hello. Okay.
Yep.
Not Bella Fleck territory, but wonderful just the same. And that's just side one. Okay. Side two, starting off with White Lightning and Wine, 3 minutes and 53 seconds. Again, in my notes, have a great finger picking guitar on the intro, nice bass drum that comes in on it, great strong guitar chords. And this is where the band funked out a little bit. They just went for it. They're just
Yeah.
having a good time in the studio. And it just sounded like a song that they came up with on the spot in the studio. You know what I mean? Someone comes up with a chord sequence or a chord progression, and they just went for it, and they just
Yeah.
built it up and went for it. Wonderful, wonderful. As I go through my notes here, track seven, side two, track two, "Love Me Like Music," "I'll Be Your Song Again."
Yeah.
Great acoustic guitar and electric guitar flourishes. Nice use of what I hear is mellotron on the piece. Just wonderfully done. Sing Child, 4 minutes and 55 seconds. Great heavy guitar chords. Beautiful cymbal crashes. Very, very dramatic with the cymbal crashes. Strong vocals on this. Great harmony vocals on it. Guitar solo to me is reminiscent of Heartbreaker from Zeppelin 2. Just a little flourish here and there. It does remind me of Heartbreaker. And it must be said, Heart are big fans and they're
Yes.
greatly influenced by Led Zeppelin. And if you don't believe that, watch the Kennedy Center Honors on
Yes.
YouTube featuring Heart paying tribute to Led Zeppelin,
Yes.
doing Stairway to Heaven featuring Jason Bonham on drums. Amazing.
Incredible.
The one and only time that I saw Robert Plant being brought to tears
Yes.
about doing someone doing a Zeppelin track. Amazing, amazing. Um, how Deep It Goes, solo composition from Ann Wilson, the lead-off single, which when it was released bombed. It really didn't catch with the band, and I think this is where Mushroom Records was trying to promote the band as folk rock, ballad rock kind of a situation. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not the case. Okay. Mushroom Records missed the plot completely, but we'll get into that.
However, it does serve a specific role within the album as a whole.
Yes, yes,
Definitely
it's
does.
a good respite from what what came before it and serves
Yes.
as the album about to end. Um,
Yes.
Dreamboat Annie reprise, which ends the album at 3 minutes and 50 seconds. Great arrangement, great strings, and use of timpani on the piece. Very lush, symphonic, beautiful,
Yes.
majestic. Majestic is the only way I can describe it. And a great album closer. Another caveat I have, okay? Ken has mentioned before in other episodes that Dreamboat Annie, the title track that ends upside two, is too short. I would agree. Had they taken all the elements, all the sections of Dreamboat Annie, Fantasy Child, the title track, and reprise, and edited them together as one single, mic drop, masterpiece. That would have been
Yeah.
it. That would have been the single.
Yeah.
And that would have encapsulated what the album was all about in
Sure.
a 4.5 minute piece of music.
Hmm.
Be- Dare I say, 5 minute piece of music.
Yeah.
Because there was only a month apart or 2 months apart between this this album coming out and the track Bohemian Rhapsody coming out as a single. So people at the time saying you couldn't have a track that was more than 3 minutes long, bullshit. There you go. If you would have
Right.
edited together the three pieces of music for Dreamboat Annie, you would have had a wonderfully put together, eloquent, lush masterpiece of a track, and it would have made more of an impact, in
Yeah.
my very humble opinion. Now,
Yeah.
we must address the elephant in the room. This album was not without its controversy. Around the release, I would imagine, of Magic Man being the second single, Mushroom Records, in their infinite ignorance and stupidity, released an ad in Rolling Stone magazine, as you see from the graphic, featuring the two Wilson sisters facing back to back, looking at the camera. Those pictures were taken during the photo shoot for the album cover, with the caption, "It was only our first time." Now, that reference was to the hit single of Magic Man, The Impact of Magic Man. The music press, being very male dominated field,
Yeah.
took that meaning to reference the fact that the two sisters were in fact lesbian lovers. We are not talking about orientation at this point in time. We are talking about the idiocy and the ignorance that was perpetrated by a, at the time, very male dominated field. To the point, this idea of the two sisters being lovers continued until 1977 when Ann Wilson was doing a show. After the show, they were met with the press, and one of the journalists asked, "How is your lesbian lover doing?" She left the show, went back to the hotel, and started writing lyrics for what would become Barracuda. as a response to that, um, shall I say, ignorant and
Yeah.
disgusting reference in question. The fact that a strong-willed woman, beautiful as she was at the time and still is, that a woman could lead or be the lead vocalist and have a uh, apprentice in the band that dictated the band's direction was quite foreign at the time. You did have,
Yeah.
prior to that, Grace Slick and Jefferson Airplane, Janis Joplin, and Big Brother and the Holding Company. But up until the mid 70s, women were unfortunately relegated to a supplemental role in the band. And
Yeah.
Heart were one of those few bands that said, we're not taking this. This is not who we are. This is not what we represent. We represent women with a strong identity, a strong sense of self, and a strong voice. And damn it, we're going to use it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, my, you know, soapbox is come to an end. I've actually fallen off the box, which is why I'm sitting down. And I'm going to answer the age-old question: is this a masterpiece? I dare say yes, it is, because for a debut album, and I've said this before, there are a lot of dynamics going on here. Jack Holtzman of Elektra Records, when he received the first Queen album, I believe I mentioned that band on this channel once or twice. When he received the Queen album, the debut release from '73, he said it was like a finely cut jewel that landed in his lap. Because according to him, unlike other debut albums that maybe had one or two singles off the album, the Queen album for him had a size to it, a proportion, a depth to it that you rarely find on debut releases. I hold Dreamboat Annie in the same realm as the debut album from Queen. There is a depth to it, there's a size, a proportion to it, a weight to it that you don't
Yeah.
necessarily get from other debut
Yeah.
albums. With the use of strings, the use of timpani, the use of oscillating synthesizer effects. There's just something about this album that to this day sounds as fresh as it did when it was released. People
It
often talk
does.
about people often talk about Kiss Alive having a, a freshness to it. Well, honestly, it's Paul Stanley that says that, but never mind that. Okay, listen to this album. To me, there is again, a depth to it that, and a size and a proportion to it that still holds true.
Yeah.
That still holds true. And you cannot deny that. You cannot deny
Yeah.
that. You may not like the band overall, but if you listen to this album, there is no doubt that there is something here that still rings true to the listener and within the music. There's an authenticity in this music, in these songs that on debut albums sometimes really isn't there. And that's not
Sure.
a detriment to the other bands. I'm just saying that very few bands find their identity within their first release. There are those that has happened, Queen, Heart, but that's
Mhm.
few and far between. And a little footnote: Kiss Alive was released on September 10th, 1975. Just wanted to throw that out there. So, you know,
Sure.
there's a method to my madness. But yes, this is, in my very humble opinion, a masterpiece. And if they ever did release a box set of this, sign me up.
I'm there. Yeah.
Sign me up. Because
And the thing about it is that's the story of the Mushroom Records and that full page ad
yeah,
wasn't the only thing. They tried in several different ways to bully the band.
yeah,
Um, when Magic Man took off and sales really started going, the band um, went back to the table with the record company to renegotiate their contract
And their
as far as
points,
the
their royalties and their
remuneration and
points. Yeah.
points. Yeah, to better reflect a a successful selling band,
Yes.
to which the record company bought, and they just did not show, at the very least, respect for the
Yes.
band.
The
So
story. Yeah.
reading,
Sorry. Go
yeah,
ahead.
so reading that not long, within a couple of years after the lawsuit was settled and all of that, that Mushroom folded, the
Yeah.
record label folded.
Yeah.
Um, it's like, yes, that's
Yeah.
that's
And
the only way that could have been better is if it happened sooner, because Heart was a hard working band,
yes.
traveling and and playing small venues. And I read that they sold 30,000 copies of this album out of the trunk of their car,
Hmm.
at these small club gigs and whatever. And so yeah, the two sisters, they weren't just, mealy, shy, women. They stood up for themselves, and it's like, God bless you, ladies. Glad you did, because this
Exactly.
wasn't a one-hit wonder.
It was not a one-hit wonder.
They stood up
And,
for themselves.
and let's be honest, Mushroom, if we want to take a sidebar, Mushroom Records played dirty because not only did they take out the ad without the band's knowledge or approval, they also took tracks that were recorded by the band that were not finished because they signed a two-album deal with Mushroom Records, and the record company they felt were owed another album. So they released these tracks with the title Magazine as their second release. The band took out a court injunction to have them stop the album in its tracks, which they were successful in doing. The band were then forced to go into the studio and re-record these tracks and release the album proper.
Yeah.
In the meantime, still signed to Mushroom Records, the band signed a new record deal with a new label through Sony called Portrait Records, whose only other signing was Burton Cummings from the Guess Who as a solo artist. They would go on and sign with Portrait Records and release Little Queen as their first, as they view it, as their second or sophomore release. But yeah, they were this band were just inundated with like sleazy tactics and just manipulation from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they stood their ground. They stood their ground.
They won on many levels.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Another episode of Is This a Masterpiece in the can. Please put down below in the comments below, because we know you love watching these episodes, your opinion of this album. Is this a masterpiece? Any of the songs on this album, do they stand out to you? Or have we missed the plot completely? Have we been sitting here for the last X amount of minutes just blowing out the side of our backsides and not knowing what we were talking about? But you know, I,
We
I
like what we like,
we like what we like. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And just a little side note, I wanted to call attention to a viewer out there who has commented about the fact that they view our channel as, friends sitting around just talking about music and having a good time. We really want to thank you for that because when I started this channel, and I'm very fortunate to have uh, Ken Cheshire and Jim Bricker and Sagosh and Bill Schuster. Do you remember Bill Schuster? To come along with me for the ride because that is exactly the premise for this channel that I wanted to have. Friends sitting around, giving each other room to discuss and talk about music. We may not always agree, but we at
Oh
least
no.
we at least give each other the time and the respect to let our opinions be talked about. And with with the episodes coming up, you'll know what I'm talking about when I mention agreeing about music or disagreeing about music.
Strap
Um,
in.
Strap in, it's a hell of a ride. So, in closing, I want to thank, first of all, do you have any other comments to make about the album?
Yeah, go listen to it.
Please, you
If you
can.
like it, fantastic. If you don't, that's okay.
I should also mention that subsequent releases of this album have been released through Capitol Records. So, um, please check it out. I actually have two copies on vinyl myself, for being a fan. Well, one copy skipped. But anyways, please check out the album. You can stream it on YouTube. You can get it on Amazon, Discogs, eBay, anywhere you buy your albums. Actually, go to a record store and purchase an album. Support your local record store, your one of the smaller record
Please,
stores. Please
please,
do, and pick this album up and listen to it and let us know what you think down below in the comments. Again, I want to thank Ken for joining me, and we are coming up with more ideas for episodes with Jim Bricker, Bill Schuster, Sagosh. I am working on a album ranking of Duran Duran, part one and two. That's coming up. Please stay tuned for that. We are going to be doing this album song discussions on such artists as, yes, Taylor Swift, The Tea Party. Please, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Look after yourselves and one another, and we will see you soon on the Music Den. Bye for now.